Get this worthless trash out of my sight! Wesley Harrington slammed the architectural model onto the marble floor where it shattered mere inches from Darian Taylor's boots. The 58-year-old CEO's face twisted with rage as he kicked the broken pieces toward the black maintenance worker. And clean up this mess before my client arrives. The gleaming lobby of Vertex Architecture fell silent. 20 pairs of eyes turned to watch Darian, 32, on his knees collecting broken pieces of the $30,000 Dubai Tower model, while the all-white executive team stepped around him as if he were just another piece of furniture. Darian's fingers bled from a sharp edge as he gathered the fragments. Not one person offered to help. The blood dripped onto his gray uniform, but he didn't stop. Couldn't stop. This job paid his electricity bill, which was already 2 weeks overdue. The main doors burst open. Sheikh Abdullah Al-Fayed stormed in with 4 stern-faced engineers. Harrington's demeanor instantly transformed from tyrant to sycophant. Sheikh Al-Fayed, welcome back to Vertex. We're preparing the presentation now. The Sheikh's cold eyes surveyed the scene. The broken model, the bleeding janitor, the nervous executives. Is this how you run your business, Harrington? Destroying models when your incompetent team can't solve basic structural problems? Darian kept his head down, but his senses sharp. He'd overheard enough to know the $80 million Dubai Tower project was on the verge of collapse, literally. The foundation design was catastrophically flawed, and protesters were already organizing demonstrations for next month. A momentary frustration. Harrington laughed nervously. That model was outdated anyway. My team has been working night and day to— Your team has failed, the Sheikh cut him off. Your foundation design will kill people if built as specified. I've seen enough empty promises. Darian spotted the latest blueprints under an assistant's arm. Just one glance at the corner revealed the fatal flaw. His fingers itched to grab a pencil and fix it. So simple, so obvious to him, yet invisible to these overpaid executives with their prestigious degrees. 30 days, the Sheikh announced, checking his diamond-encrusted watch. Fix it by then, or I pull my funding and find architects who value human lives over their egos. As Darian dumped broken model pieces into the trash, a young executive sprinted across the lobby, coffee in hand. His expensive shoe crushed Darian's fingers against the marble floor. Pain shot up Darian's arm. The executive didn't even pause. Watch it! Darian snapped before he could stop himself. The executive spun around, coffee sloshing. Did you just speak to me? The lobby went silent again. Darian knew the rule. Be invisible. I said, did you just speak to me, janitor? The executive's face reddened. While we're trying to save an $80 million project, you're worried about your fingers? Do you have any idea what real pressure is? Darian rose slowly to his full height, towering over the executive. For one dangerous moment, everything he wanted to say burned in his throat. The executive smirked, sensing advantage. That's what I thought. Know your place. He deliberately poured his remaining coffee onto the floor. Now clean that up before you find yourself unemployed. People like you are replaceable. The executive jogged to catch up with Harrington's group, leaving Darian standing in a puddle of coffee mixed with his own blood. From across the lobby, Amara Wilson, the only black architect at Vertex, witnessed everything. Their eyes met briefly, hers apologetic, his burning with something she couldn't quite identify. Darian grabbed his mop, wincing as his injured hand gripped the handle. As he cleaned the deliberate mess, his mind was already solving the Dubai Tower's foundation problem, the same problem that had these real architects panicking. What would they say if they knew the janitor they just humiliated could save their $80 million project with a few strokes of a pencil? The day would come when they'd find out. Darian vowed it would be soon. The key turned reluctantly in the lock of Darian's studio apartment. The electricity was off again. He'd expected it. The final notice had arrived last week, but the choice between power and medicine wasn't really a choice at all. Darian flicked the useless light switch out of habit, then navigated through darkness to the window. Moonlight spilled into the cramped space, illuminating walls covered with architectural sketches and newspaper clippings about famous buildings. Below them, stacked in neat piles, were past-due bills marked in angry red. He peeled off his blood-stained uniform, examining his swollen fingers in the dim light. The skin was split but not broken enough to need stitches, a small mercy considering his health insurance had lapsed 3 months ago. The refrigerator held a half-empty carton of milk and not much else. Darian grabbed it, then pulled a box of cereal from the cupboard, ignoring the expiration date. This would be dinner. Again. As he ate in the dark, Darian's eyes drifted to the small desk in the corner, the one area of his life that remained sacred. There, his grandfather's brass compass gleamed in the moonlight next to his sketchbooks. 3 pawn shops had offered good money for the antique tool, but some things were worth more than paying the electric bill. After washing his bowl in cold water, Darian lit 3 candles and opened his most treasured possession, his architecture textbooks from Howard University. 5 years ago, he'd been just months from graduation when his mother's cancer diagnosis changed everything. The choice between tuition and her treatment wasn't really a choice at all. The candlelight flickered across pages dense with structural calculations. Darian's fingers traced over the formulas as if reading Braille, his mind running through the mathematics with instinctive ease. Numbers had always made sense to him, pure, logical, beautiful in their clarity. He pulled out his sketchbook and opened to a fresh page. With precise movements, he began recreating the Dubai Tower blueprint from memory. Every detail exact, despite having seen it for only seconds. As the image took shape, the flaw in the foundation design became glaringly obvious. The northern support wouldn't handle the lateral stress from coastal winds. Anyone with proper training should have caught it. Darian sketched his solution. Elegant, cost-effective, structurally sound. This was his gift. This was what poverty and prejudice had stolen from him. A knock at the door interrupted his work. His neighbor, Mrs. Chen, from across the hall, stood with a flashlight and extension cord. "You're in the dark again," she said. Not a question, but a statement. "Run this from my apartment until payday." Darian started to refuse, pride fighting necessity, but Mrs. Chen pushed past him. "We all struggle sometimes," she said, plugging in the cord. "When my husband lost his job last year, you shared your food. Now I share my electricity." After she left, Darian plugged in his ancient laptop, a necessity for researching architectural developments through articles stolen from Vertex's digital trash. Every night he downloaded discarded reports and studies, keeping his knowledge current despite being locked out of the profession. His phone buzzed with a text from the pharmacy. His blood pressure medication was ready, but the price had increased again. $86 to $45 for a 30-day supply. He checked his bank account. $94.17 total. If he paid for the medicine, he wouldn't make rent by the 2-week deadline his landlord had given him. The stress made his head throb. He placed 2 fingers against his wrist, counting the rapid beats. Too fast, too irregular. He needed that medication. Darian closed his eyes, remembering his last conversation with his academic advisor. "You're the most talented student I've had in 20 years. This industry needs minds like yours." But the industry didn't want minds like his if they came in bodies like his. Another message lit up his phone, an alert from a job search app. Vertex Architecture was hiring a junior structural engineer. The salary listed would solve all his financial problems. The requirements: a bachelor's degree in architecture or engineering. Darian stared at the posting until his eyes burned. "Who would ever believe someone like me could design buildings?" he whispered into the dark, "when I can barely keep a roof over my head?" He closed the app and returned to his sketch of the Dubai Tower solution. This work, brilliant, precise, useless, was the only place where his talent meant something, where he was more than invisible. The moon shifted, casting new shadows across his desk. Darian worked through the night, refining his design by candlelight while his neighbors slept. designing buildings he would never build, drawing futures he would never inhabit. When the first light of dawn crept through his window, Darian closed his sketchbook and prepared for another day of mopping floors and swallowing insults. His spine straightened as he buttoned his clean uniform. Today would be different, he told himself. He'd been telling himself that for 5 years. Monday morning arrived with suffocating tension at Vertex Architecture. Darian pushed his cleaning cart through hallways buzzing with anxiety. Executives huddled in corners, voices tight with panic about the Dubai project. No one noticed him slip into the main conference room to empty trash bins during their emergency meeting. "Layoffs will be inevitable if we lose the Sheikh's contract," Harrington announced to his team, unaware or uncaring of Darian's presence. "Our stock price can't survive another high-profile failure." Darian kept his movements slow and methodical as he collected coffee cups and crumpled papers, ears absorbing every word. The room's blueprint-covered walls told the story of their desperation, dozens of attempted solutions, none addressing the core foundation problem. Xavier Chambers, the 34-year-old rising star architect, stood at the whiteboard diagramming a structural modification. With his tailored suit and Harvard degree prominently displayed in his office, Xavier embodied everything Darian had been denied. "We need to reinforce the eastern support columns," Xavier explained, marker squeaking against the board. His solution was halfway competent but missed the critical wind stress factors. Darian's hand twitched involuntarily. The error was so obvious to him. Xavier noticed the movement and turned, eyes narrowing as they landed on Darian. "Do you mind? We're trying to save an $80 million project here." "Just doing my job, sir," Darian replied, head lowered. "Do it somewhere else." Xavier pointed to the door. "And that uniform is disgusting. There's blood on it." The cut on Darian's hand from Friday had reopened that morning. A small stain marked his sleeve. "My apologies, sir." Darian backed toward the exit, cart rattling. "Wait," Amara Wilson called out. At 28, she was the only black architect at Vertex, constantly fighting to be heard. "We haven't had the morning trash collected in the West Wing yet." Her kindness was a small rebellion, but Xavier sneered. "The janitor can come back later. Some work actually matters around here, Amara." Darian left silently, the weight of Xavier's contempt following him into the hallway. Through the closing door, he heard Amara suggest examining the northern foundation support, exactly where the problem lay. Xavier immediately dismissed her. Outside, rain pounded against the windows, matching Darian's darkening mood. His phone vibrated in his pocket. Another text from his landlord. Final warning. Full payment by Friday or eviction proceedings begin. No exceptions. He'd managed to pay for his medication yesterday, leaving barely enough for bus fare to last the week. Rent was impossible now. The phone buzzed again. His electricity provider, service disconnection scheduled for Wednesday. Darian leaned against his cart, suddenly dizzy. The fluorescent lights pulsed overhead as his irregular heartbeat echoed in his ears. He needed to sit down, needed water, needed a moment to breathe. "Why is this cart blocking the hallway?" Xavier's voice cut through his haze. The architect stood with 2 clients, impatience etched on his face. "Move it!" Darian straightened, pushing the dizziness down. "Right away, sir." As he maneuvered the cart aside, Xavier muttered to his companions just loud enough to be heard. "Can't even get decent maintenance staff these days. Probably another diversity hire." The client's uncomfortable laughter pierced Darian's practiced calm. His fingers clenched around the cart handle as they passed, leaving the scent of expensive cologne in their wake. By noon, Darian's trembling hands betrayed his skipped breakfast. In the employee break room, he eyed the communal refrigerator where staff lunches waited. The thought of stealing someone's food crossed his mind for the terrifying first time. Instead, he filled a cup with tap water and chewed 2 aspirin to quiet his throbbing head. Outside the window, construction equipment had appeared at his apartment building. The first sign of the redevelopment project that would eventually demolish his home, regardless of whether he made rent. When he returned to clean the executive bathrooms, Darian overheard a conversation that stopped him cold. "The buyout is nearly complete," Harrington was saying to someone on speakerphone. "Once we acquire the remaining units in that block, we'll begin demolition immediately." "What about the holdouts?" the voice on the phone asked. "They'll cave when we cut utilities. Nobody wants to live without water. I need that land rezoned by next quarter to offset losses if the Dubai project falls through." Darian's blood turned to ice. Harrington's development company was behind his building's redevelopment. The same man threatening his job was also threatening his home. That afternoon, while cleaning the design department, Darian spotted Amara working alone, frustration evident as she erased and redrew foundation plans. "Excuse me, Ms. Wilson," he said quietly. "I noticed the trash needs emptying." She looked up, offering a tired smile. "Thanks, Darian." As he replaced her bin, he hesitated. "That northern support structure." Her eyes widened slightly. "What about it?" "It's—" he began, but Xavier appeared in the doorway. "Amara, Harrington wants the revised plans now." His eyes flicked dismissively to Darian. "Maintenance staff shouldn't be disrupting actual work." After Xavier left, Amara mouthed sorry to Darian, who nodded and pushed his cart away. Another opportunity lost. By evening, the building had emptied except for the desperate architecture team. Darian mopped the floors of the model room, his reflection distorted in the wet surface. Through the window, he could see Xavier presenting something to Harrington in the conference room, Amara's northern support modification, now claimed as his own innovation. Darian's mop slowed as he watched Amara's face fall when Harrington praised Xavier for finally showing some initiative. The familiar theft of credit made his stomach clench with recognition. In the trash bin beside the model table, something caught his eye. A partially damaged prototype of the Dubai Tower, discarded after yesterday's presentation. The structure was intact enough to work with. Darian glanced around, then quickly wrapped the model in cleaning cloths and tucked it into his supply cart. For the first time in years, a dangerous hope flickered in his chest. On the bus ride home, rain hammering the roof, Darian clutched the hidden model and made calculations in his head. 2 days until electricity cut off, 4 days until eviction proceedings, 14 days until the sheikh pulled his funding. The construction equipment outside his building had multiplied when he arrived home. A notice on the front door announced water would be shut off for maintenance tomorrow, Harrington's pressure tactic already in motion. In his dark apartment, Darian unwrapped the model and set it on his small table. By candlelight, his fingers traced the flawed foundation design, mind already rebuilding it correctly. He opened his grandfather's compass, the brass cool against his skin. "Time to show them what a janitor can do," he whispered to the empty room, as rain pelted against his window and final notices covered his floor. 3 candles burned low as midnight approached. Darian hunched over the salvaged Dubai Tower model, his hands moving with surgical precision. Despite the gnawing emptiness in his stomach, he'd skipped dinner to save money. His focus never wavered. The compass in his right hand traced perfect arcs as he reconstructed the tower's foundation support system, fixing the fatal flaw that had eluded Vertex's prestigious team. He worked by touch as much as sight, fingers remembering what his mind had studied years ago. The smooth feeling of the modeling clay yielded to his expertise as he reshaped the northern foundation to account for the coastal wind stress patterns. Simple, elegant, correct. A knock at his door startled him. At this hour, it could only be trouble. Mrs. Chen stood in the hallway, her face illuminated by her phone's flashlight. "Water's already off," she said without preamble. "Earlier than they promised, the whole building." "They're pushing us out faster than expected," Darian replied, letting her in. Mrs. Chen's eyes widened at the architectural model on his table. What is this? Darian hesitated. No one outside his university had seen his work in years. Just a hobby. She moved closer, flashlight revealing the intricate structure. This is not hobby work. This is professional. Her finger hovered over his modified foundation design. You're an architect? Almost was, he answered, the familiar bitterness rising. Had to drop out in my final year. Mrs. Chen studied the model, then Darian's wall of sketches, understanding dawning on her face. You work at an architecture firm as a janitor? The blunt assessment stung despite its accuracy. Bills don't wait for dreams. She pointed to the model. This building, it's the one from the news? The Dubai project with problems? Darian nodded reluctantly. And you fixed it? She didn't wait for confirmation. Why don't you tell them? Show them? His laugh held no humor. You think they'd listen to the man who cleans their toilets? Mrs. Chen's expression hardened. My father was a structural engineer in Shanghai. He built bridges that still stand 50 years later. He would say talent doesn't care about titles. After she left, her words echoed in Darian's mind as he returned to the model. By 3 a.m., he'd completed the modifications, even improving on his original concept. The result was beautiful, structurally sound, economical, and preserving the tower's aesthetic vision. The sight of his work, tangible and perfect, awakened something long dormant. Pride, possibility, purpose. But as dawn approached, reality crashed back. He was still a janitor with no degree, facing eviction and utility shutoffs. His brilliant solution wouldn't pay his rent. Who would believe someone like me could design buildings when I can barely keep a roof over my head? He whispered to the silent room. Morning arrived with a pounding headache. Without water, Darian couldn't take his blood pressure medication. He tucked the pills into his pocket, hoping to find water at work. The construction crews outside his building had multiplied overnight. A massive excavator stood ready, its yellow arm poised like a predator. The message was clear. Demolition was imminent, regardless of the remaining residents. At Vertex, Darian moved through his cleaning routine mechanically, saving his energy. The medication in his pocket remained untaken. He couldn't risk anyone seeing him swallow pills in the bathroom. Suspicion followed maintenance staff everywhere. During his lunch break, he sat alone in the supply closet, leaning against shelves of cleaning products while dizziness washed over him. His phone displayed a final eviction warning, 72 hours to vacate, no extensions. The afternoon dragged as Darian cleaned the executive floor. Outside Harrington's office, he overheard the CEO on the phone. The protest is gaining traction. Local news is covering it now. If we don't solve this foundation issue before the sheikh returns, we're finished. Later, while emptying Amara's trash, Darian noticed her abandoned desk. Her design drawings showed she was still struggling with the northern support problem, getting closer but missing key elements. An opportunity materialized in his mind. That evening, after everyone had left, Darian returned to his supply closet and removed the modified Dubai Tower model from his cart. He'd smuggled it in that morning, wrapped in cleaning rags. Heart pounding, he carried it to Amara's desk and placed it beside her computer with a handwritten note explaining the structural modifications. No signature, no name, just pure architectural problem solving. It was the most dangerous thing he'd ever done. But what did he have to lose? In 3 days, he'd have no home. Without this job, he'd have no medication. The walls were closing in from all sides. Darian left the building that night with equal measures of terror and exhilaration coursing through his veins. For once, he'd acted instead of endured. Morning arrived with a thunderstorm that matched his nervous energy. Darian entered Vertex earlier than usual, eager to see if Amara had discovered his gift. The executive floor buzzed with unusual activity for this hour. Through the glass conference room walls, he saw Amara gesturing excitedly to several colleagues, pointing to the modified model on the table. Darian kept his head down, mop moving steadily across the lobby floor, but his eyes missed nothing. Amara's expression was animated as she explained the structural solution to her peers. For the first time in years, hope flickered in his chest. The elevator dinged, and Xavier Chambers stepped out, making a beeline for the conference room. Darian watched as Xavier entered the meeting, face darkening as he observed the model. Words were exchanged, Amara pointing to specific modifications, Xavier's posture growing defensive. Then Xavier picked up the model, examined it briefly, and said something that made the room fall silent. Xavier left the conference room, model in hand, striding purposefully toward his office. As he passed Darian, his words were just loud enough to hear. "I'll evaluate this mysterious contribution personally. No need to waste everyone's time if it doesn't check out." Darian's mop slowed as he watched his work, his solution, disappear behind Xavier's closing door. The hope that had flickered so briefly began to fade. That afternoon, Darian cleaned Xavier's office while the architect was at lunch. The model sat on his desk, surrounded by notes in Xavier's handwriting, equations confirming the solution's validity. A draft email on his computer screen caught Darian's eye. "After extensive analysis, I've identified the foundation design solution." Xavier was claiming the work as his own. Darian's hand tightened around his broom handle as anger surged through him. But what had he expected? This was how the world worked. People like Xavier took, people like Darian lost. As he turned to leave, his elbow knocked over Xavier's coffee mug, spilling liquid across the desk and onto the keyboard. Panic shot through him as he rushed to clean up the mess, heart pounding with the potential consequences. When Xavier returned and discovered the damage, his rage was explosive. "You incompetent fool!" he shouted, drawing attention from the entire floor. "Do you have any idea what you've done? There was critical work on that computer?" Darian apologized repeatedly, head bowed, playing the role expected of him while shame and fury battled in his chest. As he left Xavier's office, he passed Amara, who whispered, "I know that model didn't come from him. Who gave it to you?" Before he could respond, Xavier called her away, leaving Darian alone with the knowledge that his solution would save the Dubai project. But Xavier would get the credit, the promotion, the future. That night, Darian returned to a dark apartment building. The electricity was now off in the entire structure, not just his unit. The water remained shut off. Construction equipment surrounded the property like siege weapons. In his apartment, he lit his last candles and opened his sketchbook. If his solution was good enough for Xavier to steal, then it was good enough to document. With methodical precision, Darian began recording every detail of his design process, every calculation, every insight. For the first time in years, he signed his full name at the bottom of each page: Darian Taylor, architectural designer. Let them try to erase him now. Dawn broke over a city indifferent to Darian's small victory. He stood in the Vertex lobby watching Xavier receive congratulations from Harrington while presenting his solution to the Dubai Tower's structural problems. The bitter taste in Darian's mouth contrasted sharply with the sweetness of knowing his design would work, would save the project, save jobs, including his own minimum wage position. "Brilliant work, Xavier," Harrington boomed, clapping the younger man's shoulder. "I knew promoting you was the right call. The Sheik will be impressed." Xavier's smile held the easy confidence of a man accustomed to praise he hadn't earned. "Just doing what I'm paid for, sir." Darian's mop moved mechanically across the floor, his face a practiced mask hiding the storm within. He'd spent his life being invisible. Today, that invisibility became his advantage as he observed every detail of the celebration. By mid-morning, word had spread throughout Vertex. The Dubai project was back on track. Jobs were safe. The stock price had already risen 3 points on insider whispers. While cleaning the women's restroom, Darian overheard 2 executives discussing Xavier's sudden breakthrough. Convenient timing, one said, applying lipstick in the mirror. He's been stuck for weeks, then magically solves it overnight. Who cares? The other replied. As long as the sheikh signs off, we all keep our bonuses. During his lunch break, Darian sat alone in the maintenance room, chewing a dry sandwich and calculating his next move. Xavier had stolen his work, but the foundation design was just the beginning. The secondary issues, structural integrity during seismic events, materials efficiency, cost optimization, remained unsolved, issues that Darian had already addressed in his notebooks. His phone buzzed with an eviction notice, 48 hours remaining. The construction company had accelerated their timeline. Several neighbors had already abandoned the building, unable to live without utilities. Darian closed his eyes, the throbbing behind them intensifying. His medication remained in his pocket, useless without water. The room spun slightly when he stood, a warning sign he couldn't afford to heed. That afternoon, while cleaning near Amara's workspace, she beckoned him over when no one was looking. "That model," she whispered. "It appeared overnight." "Was it you?" Darian hesitated, years of self-preservation warring with the desperate need for recognition. "I know it wasn't Xavier," she continued. "He couldn't explain the lateral stress calculations when I asked." "If I had architectural solutions," Darian said carefully, "would anyone here listen?" "I would." Her eyes held genuine curiosity. "But without proof." The cleaning cart between them represented the gulf separating their worlds. Darian nodded slightly. "I'll keep watching Xavier," she promised. "He's taking credit, but he's missing something. The foundation is just part of the problem." Their conversation ended abruptly when Xavier approached. "Amara, Harrington wants us in the conference room. And Janitor, there's a spill in my office that needs attention." Alone in Xavier's office, Darian found his stolen model now prominently displayed on the credenza, labeled with Xavier's name. Beside it sat expansion plans that incorporated none of Darian's secondary solutions, proof that Xavier had only stolen the foundation fix without understanding the comprehensive approach. That evening, Darian smuggled out copies of the latest project documents in his cleaning cart. If Xavier wanted to play architect with stolen work, Darian would ensure he had the complete design to document, and proof of his authorship. At his darkened apartment building, now nearly deserted, he found Mrs. Chen packing the last of her belongings. "They're cutting the gas lines tomorrow," she said, exhaustion etched on her face. "My cousin has a spare room in Queens." "You're leaving?" Despite understanding her decision, panic flared in Darian's chest. His last ally. "I'm too old to fight billionaires," she replied, then hesitated. "What about you?" Darian had no answer. His bank account showed $8.47. Not enough for a security deposit anywhere, barely enough for bus fare to work. "Before I go," Mrs. Chen said, "my nephew helped me with something." She handed him a small device. "It's a camera, for your work, to prove what's yours." That night, by the light of his phone's dimming battery, Darian set up the camera in his apartment. With methodical precision, he began documenting his process, speaking clearly as he worked through the remaining Dubai Tower problems: seismic reinforcement, materials optimization, cost efficiency. His grandfather's compass clicked open and closed as he worked, a meditative rhythm connecting him to his heritage. The brass tool caught the phone's light, gleaming like a beacon as Darian explained each calculation, each design choice. The Northern Foundation modification addresses the primary structural flaw, he explained to the camera. But without these secondary reinforcements, the building remains vulnerable to Category 4 seismic events. Hour after hour, he worked and documented, pausing only when dizziness threatened to overwhelm him. The deadline for the Sheikh's return loomed just 3 days away. The eviction deadline, less than 2. Morning came too quickly. At Vertex, whispers circulated that the Sheikh had moved up his visit to tomorrow, a full day earlier than planned. The company scrambled to prepare, with Xavier at the center of the chaos, basking in his borrowed expertise. During an emergency meeting, Darian was cleaning around. Xavier presented the progress confidently until a senior engineer asked about seismic reinforcement. "I'm still finalizing those calculations," Xavier stammered, shooting a glance at Amara, hoping she might rescue him. She didn't. Harrington's face darkened. "The Sheikh specifically mentioned seismic concerns after the Istanbul Tower collapse last month. We need those calculations before he arrives." Xavier promised delivery by morning, but Darian could see the panic behind his confident smile. That night, Darian worked feverishly in his apartment, now the only occupied unit in the building. Construction equipment had begun preliminary demolition on the east wing. The wrecking ball would reach his section within days. His phone battery died mid-recording. The backup battery pack followed an hour later. In the total darkness, Darian continued working by touch and memory, his fingers tracing over drawings and calculations with a precision born of necessity. When morning arrived, he had completed the comprehensive redesign, addressing every weakness in the Dubai Tower. The evidence of his work and Xavier's theft was documented as thoroughly as his circumstances allowed. But getting anyone to see it remained an insurmountable challenge. At Vertex, the atmosphere was electric with tension. The Sheikh would arrive at 3 p.m. Xavier looked ill, his confident facade crumbling as he failed to produce the seismic calculations he'd promised. Harrington cornered him in the hallway, voice low but intense. "If you embarrass me in front of the Sheikh, your career is over. Do you understand?" Darian, mopping nearby, absorbed every word. During lunch, he made his decision. Instead of eating in the maintenance room, he went to Amara's desk. "I can prove it was my work," he said without preamble. "And I have the seismic solutions they need." Amara's eyes widened. "You're serious?" "I need access to the presentation, not as maintenance staff." Understanding dawned on her face. "The catering team for the Sheikh's visit." "Can you arrange it?" She hesitated only briefly. "Meet me in the staff lounge at 2:30. The afternoon crawled by as Darian cleaned the executive floor one last time. His vision occasionally blurred, days without medication taking their toll. But determination drove him forward. Today would end differently than all the days before it. At 2:15, he received a text message from his landlord. "Building demolition accelerated. All remaining possessions will be removed by 5 p.m. today." Everything he owned, his sketches, his textbooks, his grandfather's few mementos, would be destroyed or discarded. The timing couldn't be worse, or perhaps more appropriate. He had nothing left to lose. At 2:30, Amara met him with a catering uniform and badge. "The team thinks you're a last-minute hire," she explained. "You'll have access to the boardroom during the presentation." Darian changed quickly in the maintenance closet, the crisp white shirt a stark contrast to his usual gray uniform. The transformation was more than physical. Straightening his shoulders, lifting his chin, he became someone else, someone visible. In his pocket, his grandfather's compass felt heavy with possibility. His phone held the documented evidence of his work, ready to be displayed if needed. As he adjusted his tie, borrowed from a lost-and-found box, his reflection in the mirror revealed a man he barely recognized, professional, capable, worthy. The Sheikh's motorcade was scheduled to arrive in 20 minutes. Xavier was sweating through his expensive suit, still unable to provide the seismic calculations. Harrington was one step from open panic. Darian took a deep breath, fingers touching the compass in his pocket. Years of invisibility were about to end. Whether in triumph or catastrophic failure remained to be seen. But for the first time since leaving Howard University, Darian Taylor was ready to be seen. The boardroom of Vertex architecture gleamed under recessed lighting, a temple to power and prestige. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the city skyline, a view Darian had only ever cleaned, never admired. Now, dressed in crisp catering whites instead of maintenance gray, he arranged water glasses with deliberate precision, each movement calculated to maintain his cover while positioning himself for what was to come. His heartbeat thundered in his ears, nearly drowning out the nervous chatter of executives filing into the room. The sound intensified as Sheikh Abdullah Al-Fayed's entourage appeared in the doorway, the client himself flanked by 4 stern-faced engineers and 2 financial advisors. "Sheikh Al-Fayed, welcome back to Vertex." Harrington's voice carried forced confidence as he extended his hand. "We're delighted to present our comprehensive solution." Darian kept his head slightly lowered, offering water and coffee to the assembled group while absorbing every detail. Xavier stood near the presentation screen, sweat beading visibly at his temples despite the room's perfect temperature. Beside him, Amara arranged the architectural models, her eyes occasionally flicking toward Darian with a mixture of anticipation and concern. "Let us proceed quickly," the Sheikh said, checking his watch. "My flight leaves in 3 hours, and I have other firms to meet should your solution prove inadequate." The unspoken threat hung in the air. Fail today, lose $80 million. Xavier stepped forward, launching into his presentation with rehearsed charm. "As you can see, Sheikh Al-Fayed, we've completely redesigned the foundation structure to address the coastal wind stress factors." Darian watched as Xavier presented the stolen foundation design, his design, with the confidence of a thief who believes he'll never be caught. The Sheikh's engineers nodded approvingly at the modified northern support structure, making notes on their tablets. For 15 minutes, Xavier maintained the facade brilliantly. Then came the inevitable pivot. "Now, regarding the seismic reinforcement strategy," Xavier's voice faltered slightly. One of the Sheikh's engineers interrupted. "The Istanbul Tower collapse demonstrated that foundation stability alone is insufficient. How have you addressed potential Category 4 seismic events?" Xavier's smile tightened. "We've developed a comprehensive approach to—" "Show me the calculations," the engineer pressed, leaning forward. "Specifically for the junction points between your modified northern support and the existing eastern framework." The room fell silent. Xavier glanced desperately at Harrington, who stared back with barely concealed panic. "Perhaps," Xavier stammered, "we should focus on the cost efficiencies first." "No." The Sheikh's voice was firm. "My engineers have specific concerns about seismic stability. Address them now." Darian moved quietly around the room, refilling water glasses, each step bringing him closer to the presentation area. The compass in his pocket seemed to grow heavier with each passing second. Xavier fumbled through slides, presenting generic seismic data that failed to address the specific question. The Sheikh's expression darkened. His chief engineer whispered something that made him check his watch again. "Mr. Chambers," the Sheikh said, "you've had 2 weeks to solve a problem that threatens lives. Either you have the seismic calculations, or you don't." "Sir, the complexity of the integration points requires—" "So you don't have them." The Sheikh stood. "Mr. Harrington, I'm disappointed. I expected solutions, not excuses." Harrington's face drained of color. "Sheikh Al-Fayed, please. We've made extraordinary progress. Perhaps if we reconvene tomorrow—" "My plane leaves today, as will my funding, it seems." The Sheikh nodded to his entourage, who began gathering their materials. Darian's fingers found the compass in his pocket. The moment of decision had arrived, and with it, a curious calm. The room seemed to slow around him, the panicked expressions, the shuffling papers, the whispered accusations between executives, all moving through molasses as his focus crystallized. "Excuse me," Darian said, his voice cutting through the chaos, "but there's something you're not seeing in the Northwest Foundation support." The room froze. Every head turned toward the source of the interruption, the catering staff member who had dared to speak. The Sheikh paused, briefcase half closed. "What did you say?" Harrington's face contorted with fury. "This is unacceptable. Security will—" Let him speak, the sheikh commanded, curiosity overtaking anger. Darian set down his water pitcher and moved toward the blueprint spread across the table. The texture of the paper felt familiar under his fingertips, a sensation he'd been denied for too long. The seismic vulnerability isn't in the modified northern support itself, Darian explained, voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. It's in the integration points where the new structure meets the original design. He pulled his grandfather's compass from his pocket, using it to indicate precise locations on the blueprint. The lateral stress from a Category 4 event would create shearing force here, here, and here, but with 3 additional reinforcement struts configured in a triangular pattern. His hands moved with confident precision, sketching directly onto the blueprint overlay, adding the missing elements with perfect, practiced strokes. The room remained stunned into silence as complex calculations flowed from him without hesitation. The resulting structure distributes seismic energy along these pathways, Darian continued, reducing maximum stress points by 43% while adding only 1.2% to material costs. The Sheikh's chief engineer stepped forward, eyes narrowed as he examined Darian's additions. These calculations are correct, Darian finished for him. I can demonstrate the math if you'd like. The engineer pulled out his tablet, fingers flying across the screen as he input variables. After a tense moment, he looked up, nodding slowly. The distribution factors align. This would work. Xavier surged forward, face flushed with rage and embarrassment. This is absurd. He's a server, for God's sake. Actually, Darian said, straightening to his full height, I'm the maintenance worker who cleans your office every night. The same maintenance worker who created the foundation design you've been presenting as your own. Gasps rippled through the room. Harrington's mouth opened and closed without sound. That's a serious accusation, the sheikh said, studying Darian with new interest. Can you prove this claim? Yes. Darian pulled out his phone, opening the video documentation he'd created. I have recordings of my design process, including the seismic calculations I just demonstrated. As the video played, showing Darian working through the exact solutions now presented, Xavier's face crumpled. Amara stepped forward, adding her testimony. The anonymous model appeared on my desk overnight, she confirmed. Xavier claimed to have created it, but couldn't explain the fundamental principles when questioned. The Sheikh's engineers huddled around the phone, examining the evidence with professional scrutiny. Their whispered conference ended with nods of agreement. The mathematical approach is consistent, the chief engineer confirmed. These are clearly from the same mind. Xavier exploded. This is ridiculous. He probably overheard our discussions while cleaning, picked up some terminology, and... Terminal shear stress coefficients aren't something you pick up from eavesdropping, Darian countered calmly. Neither are hydrodynamic load distribution formulas. To demonstrate his point, Darian turned to the whiteboard and rapidly filled it with complex structural calculations, equations far beyond what someone could absorb through casual listening. The sheikh watched with increasing interest. Why are you working as maintenance staff with this level of expertise? The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. For the first time, Darian felt the full weight of every eye in the room, not looking through him, but at him. I was in my final year of architectural engineering at Howard University when my mother was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, he explained, the words rising from a place long buried. I had to choose between finishing my degree or paying for her treatment. There was no choice, really. The atmosphere in the room shifted perceptibly, the tension transforming into something more complex. After she passed, I tried to return, but the tuition had increased. I took the maintenance job to save for classes, then discovered how difficult it is to advance when you're starting from nothing. Darian's voice remained steady, factual rather than pleading. I kept my skills current by studying discarded reports and journals. The Dubai Tower's flaws were obvious to me the moment I saw the blueprints. Yet you said nothing until now, Harrington interjected, searching for leverage. Would you have listened? Darian asked, simply. The silence that followed was answer enough. The sheikh closed his briefcase with a decisive click. "Mr. Taylor, was it? I have a proposition for you. My team will verify your calculations thoroughly, of course, but assuming they confirm what I've seen today." He glanced at Harrington. "I want this man added to the project team, officially, with appropriate title and compensation." Harrington's face contorted with conflicting emotions, the desire to refuse battling with the reality of an $80 million contract hanging in the balance. "Sheikh Al-Fayed, while we appreciate Mr. Taylor's contribution, there are protocols, qualifications, which clearly failed to produce results," the sheikh cut him off. "I'm not interested in degrees, Mr. Harrington. I'm interested in solutions. This man provided what your entire team could not." The ultimatum was clear: Darian or no contract. Harrington's capitulation came with a tight smile. "Of course, we can discuss the details of Mr. Taylor's position after you depart." "No," the sheikh said firmly. "We will discuss it now, with Mr. Taylor present." The room's atmosphere changed again, lighter somehow, as if air previously too heavy to breathe had suddenly cleared. Darian felt the sensation of countless invisible barriers dissolving around him, barriers he'd navigated for so long they'd become part of his identity. As negotiations proceeded, with the sheikh's team advocating for a senior design position and appropriate salary, Darian caught his reflection in the boardroom's window. For the first time in years, he recognized the man looking back at him. Not a janitor, not a dropout, but an architect. The man he was always meant to be. "I want Mr. Taylor's name prominently featured on all project documentation moving forward," Sheikh Al-Fayed declared, his authoritative voice leaving no room for negotiation. "His contribution will be acknowledged properly." Darian stood by the boardroom window, the weight of a company ID badge unfamiliar around his neck. The plastic credential, hastily printed with "Darian Taylor, Architectural Consultant," felt simultaneously insubstantial and immensely heavy, a physical symbol of his transformed status. Harrington's smile remained fixed and pained as he agreed to the sheikh's demands. Of course, Mr. Taylor will be integral to the project's completion. The meeting concluded with handshakes and signatures, the $80 million project saved, though not by those who'd expected to save it. As the room emptied, Darian remained, momentarily alone with the blueprints that had changed his life. He didn't notice the young assistant in the corner, phone discreetly recording the entire confrontation. By morning, the video had spread through architectural circles like wildfire. The hashtag #ChatTheRealArchitect trended alongside clips of Darian's impromptu presentation and Xavier's humiliation. The story, a maintenance worker with exceptional talent exposing fraud and saving a prestigious project, proved irresistible to both industry publications and mainstream media. Darian arrived at Vertex the next day to find the lobby buzzing with whispers that fell silent as he passed. No longer in maintenance gray or catering white, but wearing his one decent shirt, he walked toward the elevator nobody had ever seen him use. Javier intercepted him near the design department, face tight with barely controlled rage. "Enjoy your moment of fame," he hissed, voice low enough that only Darian could hear. "My father golfed with Harrington for 20 years. I'll still be here when your story gets old." Darian regarded him calmly. "I don't want your job, Xavier. I want my own designs." "Then why humiliate me?" Xavier demanded. "I didn't," Darian replied simply. "You did that yourself when you stole my work." Before Xavier could respond, Amara approached with a tablet displaying an architectural news site. "Darian, you need to see this." The headline read, "Vertex's janitor-turned-architect exposes industry gatekeeping." Below it, the video of yesterday's confrontation had already reached 2 million views. Darian's phone began ringing with calls from unknown numbers, Journalists, industry professionals, even competing firms sensing opportunity in the viral story. One voicemail caught his attention. An associate dean from Howard University, discussing options to complete your degree under special circumstances. By afternoon, Harrington summoned Darian to his office, expression unreadable as he closed the door. "This publicity is unprecedented," the CEO began, fingers steepled. "Not how I would have preferred things to unfold." Darian remained silent, waiting. "Sheikh Al-Fayed called this morning. He wants to offer you a separate consulting contract, independent of Vertex. Triple our salary offer." Harrington's mouth tightened. "Apparently, your story resonates in Dubai, where many of their leading architects came from. Humble beginnings." The irony wasn't lost on Darian. "And what does Vertex want?" "Damage control," Harrington admitted bluntly. "The narrative could be destructive, privileged firm overlooks genius in their midst, or constructive, Vertex discovers and elevates hidden talent. Your choice which story gets told." "Interesting that my choice suddenly matters," Darian observed. A knock interrupted them. Harrington's assistant entered with a tablet displaying a breaking news item. Vertex CEO's development company accused of aggressive displacement tactics. Darian recognized his apartment building in the footage, construction equipment surrounding the dilapidated structure where Mrs. Chen and other residents were being interviewed about utility shutoffs and intimidation tactics. "Coincidental timing," Darian noted, watching Harrington's face pale. "What do you want?" the CEO asked, recognizing the leverage shift. "Protection for the current residents, guaranteed relocation assistance, fair market value buyouts." Darian leaned forward, "And every item documented in legally binding terms." The negotiation took less than an hour, Harrington's fear of expanded negative publicity proving more persuasive than any moral argument could have been. By evening, Darian had secured legally binding protections for his former neighbors, including Mrs. Chen. His phone vibrated with a text message from an unknown number. "Apartment 2B ready for inspection. Address below. First month free for the building's newest architectural consultant. Mrs. Chen's nephew." 2 days later, Darian stood at the Dubai Tower groundbreaking ceremony, the smell of fresh concrete filling the air as ceremonial shovels turned the first soil. He wore a new suit, his first, and stood among the design team rather than behind them with cleaning equipment. Sheikh Al-Fayed approached him after the formal proceedings. "I've reviewed your comprehensive designs. Impressive work, especially considering the circumstances under which they were created." "Thank you for the opportunity to contribute properly," Darian replied. "In my country, we have a saying, 'The true builder sees the palace in the sand before others see even a grain.'" The sheikh studied him thoughtfully. "Your talent was always there, waiting for recognition. The question is, what will you build now that the world is watching?" The media attention continued for weeks. Darian gave carefully selected interviews, using each platform to highlight systemic barriers in architecture and other professional fields. His story of talent obscured by circumstance resonated far beyond the industry, sparking uncomfortable discussions about who gets seen and who remains invisible. Gavier was demoted but not fired, family connections providing insulation against complete disgrace. Harrington's development company revised its practices under public scrutiny, though skeptics noted the changes came only after exposure. 3 months later, Darian sat in his new apartment, surrounded by architectural drawings for his first independent commission, a community center in his old neighborhood. On his desk, his grandfather's compass lay beside a framed acceptance letter from Howard University's specialized completion program for working professionals. A local news segment played on his laptop. Following the viral #TheRealArchitect story, several major architectural firms have launched apprenticeship programs specifically targeting talented individuals from non-traditional backgrounds. Darian smiled slightly, turning back to his designs. The compass clicked open in his hands, the same tool that had guided him through darkness now catching the light in his sun-filled studio. He made a small adjustment to the community center's entrance, improving both function and form. His phone chimed with a text from Amara. New project meeting tomorrow. They specifically requested both architects attend. The recognition felt good, but it wasn't why he kept working late into the evening, refining and perfecting his designs. The true satisfaction came from the work itself, the problem-solving, the creativity, the ability to shape spaces that would outlast him. His talent hadn't needed validation to exist, but now that it had been seen, there was no returning to invisibility. On his wall hung a simple frame containing his maintenance uniform badge alongside his new architectural credentials, a reminder that true worth isn't determined by title or position, that excellence can exist anywhere, even when unrecognized, that sometimes the real architect is the one nobody thought to ask. If you were moved by Darian's journey from invisible janitor to recognized architect, don't let this story end here. Subscribe to Beat Stories now for more powerful tales of underdog triumph and justice served. Liked how talent finally got its due? Hit that subscribe button and join our community of storytelling enthusiasts who crave authentic narratives about breaking barriers and claiming your rightful place.
What happened today isn't just a story. It's a reminder. Silence protects systems, but courage rewrites them. At Beat Stories, we don't just watch change, we document it. Subscribe for more real stories that challenge power and amplify truth.